we have the FuckUp Riots, which is Festival of Failure, which is happening in September 2017, and a gathering of fuck-uppers, so we can all meet each other personally. So a lot of failure stories to come from there, and a lot of things are going to go wrong for sure.
Welcome to the Masks Off podcast, Leadership Strategies, No Disguises. I'm Razwana Waheed, and together with my co-host Olivier Larvor, we talk to the smartest people in the world of leadership, change and psychology to give leaders real strategies to bring human back to the workplace.
If you would like to support our show, please subscribe to our channel, like us, or share this episode on your social media. It will help us greatly.
In this episode, we talk to Yannick Kwik, COO of FuckUp Nights, talking about all things failure, when to call it, how to celebrate it, and the best way to learn from it.
FuckUp Nights started in 2012. We're the 5 co-founders. I'm not one of the 5 co-founders. I joined the team later on, but they were having some mezcal, which is a sort of tequila, Mexican drink. And they got drunk and they start to get personal, and they share their failure stories, their business failure stories. And apart from besides being very good friends, they didn't know that each of them had a failure story, which was surprising. So they had a great evening sharing all those crappy experiences between them. They had laughs and tears, and they thought it was fantastic, and they decided it would be incredible to host an event where people could openly share their business and professional failure stories. So they met the day after without being drunk to see if it was a good idea, and they all agreed that indeed it was, and they decided to host the first FuckUp Night ever in September 2012. So they invited their friends, they selected 3 speakers. They were speakers, obviously, as well. Not a lot of brave speakers to convince for the first ever chapter. And they bought a couple of beers, and it was the first FuckUp Night on a very underground format. People loved it, and people asked them to please continue doing them. So they hosted one since then every single month until now. I think we have hosted over 50 events already for these almost 5 years. When they opened up social media platforms, the thing just bursted, and other cities wanted to replicate this format. We sort of developed a franchise model where people could pay a membership and get the resources, use our brand, get our support, and help organizing FuckUp Night. The thing has gone wild, and we're present in 230 cities in 80 countries around the world. FuckUp Nights are hosted in 26 different languages and growing. Now FuckUp Nights is just only one initiative of a group where we also do research through the Failure Institute. It's our research department. This is research based on data where we identify trends, and we try to predict failure depending on the country, on the industry, on the gender, etc. Then we have FuckUp Media. We're working on a documentary, on a TV show, and another different kind of media products. And we have the FuckUp Riots, which is Festival of Failure, which is happening in September 2017, and a gathering of fuck-uppers, so we can all meet each other personally. So a lot of failure stories to come from there, and a lot of things are going to go wrong for sure.
What do you think it is about people gathering to talk about their failures that's so attractive?
I think it is the taboo thing that is sexy. I think there is a need on society. So we've realized in countries where people tend to be more straight and more perfect and more professional, there's an increasing need of a space where people can freely talk about their failures. And in those cases, FuckUp Nights are being more successful. Let's say Mexico, for instance, let's say Germany, etc. So I think it is just a need to get your tie off, get your shoes off, and be yourself.
I noticed that there's always alcohol involved. When you said, tequila first, and then in the FuckUp Nights, you always have beers. So do you need actually something for people to relax? It's almost to be vulnerable in front of others, to be able to share and to say, well, yeah, look, I fucked up on this one. How difficult is it for the people to actually share their stories?
After a couple of beers, it's easier to convince them to get on stage. We actually, it's funny because we have an organizer's manual. We call it the FuckUpers manual because we're local organizers, FuckUpers. We give that manual with indications to follow, like a mandatory point to beers on their event. Are you guys following me?
We are there, but actually you're frozen on my screen, so I can hear you, but you're
okay, because you guys are frozen as well. Okay.
This is actually good because it shows exactly what happens in real life. You know, we are fucking it up, you know, as we said. So let's continue. Let's continue and see how it goes. You know, if we can bring from this experience something good out of it. So let's go.
Yeah, get into the alcohol point. It's funny because we organize FuckUp nights in some Muslim countries, and they are not sure about organizing FuckUp nights because they see alcohol consumption. We always let them have tea or soft drinks, but it's something related. Basically, want people to feel on a relaxed atmosphere when it comes to hearing about failure stories and being true and being honest. When it comes to talk about business, which there's a lack on honesty on my point of view when people talk about their own businesses. How difficult it is to convince people to jump on stage, it really depends on the person. What we try to do always is to let them know their failure story is going to be not only inspiring, but it's going to help people take better or more informed decisions in business. Let me just move because there's a little bit of sound here. Sorry, guys.
Yannick, we had our own issues today getting connected. I had to run around the building I'm in trying to find somewhere quiet. So I think it's a running theme.
This is what's happening. You know, we are trying to build something, and this is day to day what actually businesses also experience. You know, you want this to be perfect, to run this, and then this is what happens in reality. But at the same time, in businesses, it's very, very hard, you know, inside companies to talk about failures. So what is your point of view? Why do we have this fear of sharing our failures in companies?
Well, it's normal to have fear of failure because failure sucks, really, and people think we love talking. Like, we love failing, and it's not that we like failing. We try as much as possible to avoid failure because it's not good. It's a result of doing something wrong, and you have to pay for it. But the bad thing is not analyzing those failures and not learning from them. So if you don't build a space where people can talk about those failures without being blamed for, we won't be able to learn from them, and that's a recession for a company. Actually, one of our most fastest growing revenue streams is organizing private events for corporations and big companies. So we take the format of FuckUp nights to an internal corporate event, and we get the CEOs or managers or employees to talk about their failures on their day-to-day, on their projects they're working on their previous companies. It's very hard to get companies to accept this from management, to accept their own failures, especially if you have the CEO or a high executive manager admitting they failed at X project in front of their companies. But I've seen lately that there are a lot of companies figuring out that they have this need to accept failure in order to enable innovation and in order to enable a healthy culture on their company. So it's an increasing thing, and it's great because it's great for avoiding failures in the future. It costs them less money because when you find out about a failure on the early stage, it costs less than when people are quiet about that failure, and sometimes it's a bit too late to fix it. And also, it's good for us because there are more requests on those private events.
Yannick, what examples can you give us from those corporate events of companies that have had an evening talking about failures and then the innovations that they've gone on to create?
It's quite difficult, really, to measure the impact those events have on the companies, but through the Failure Institute, our research arm, we developed a tool where we send a specific survey before the event, and we send a specific survey after the event, and we can measure changes on the culture of the company when it comes to accepting failures. It has surprisingly worked a lot to change that culture and to enable that mindset of innovation and freedom, and also it helps minimizing the hierarchy of the company. As for examples, we've hosted plenty of private events for companies such as Google, IBM, Microsoft, Coca-Cola. We hosted them for larger events like CeBIT in Germany. We hosted them for non-profit organizations, etc. Sometimes depending on the objective of the company, we invite different kind of speakers, or we let them be the speakers. If the message wants to be from top to bottom of the company on management and on culture, we recommend them to have them at least 2 internal speakers. If they want to have a message of innovation, we sometimes invite speakers from the creative industries that can join the event, and sometimes they just want to have fun, and we bring our best speakers, and we make sure there are enough beers.
Beers are important. We get that.
I had to say beers again. I have to finish with beers. All of your questions.
You are a CEO of this company, of this FuckUp Nights company, and I'm curious though. How do you apply this into your organization yourself? How is it different for you to manage this organization? Do you talk openly about failures? How it's different from a normal organization?
It's completely different to any other organization where I've worked before. Really, it's a place where we talk face to face, where we talk from people to people, where there are no bosses on this organization. There are just people that help make the most of the work of a team. It's a big cliche saying this, but it's true. It's crazy. And we're finding that onboarding new employees is harder on such a structure, because you won't have no one that is going to be telling you off for not doing something very specific or pushing you to get to that deadline. Obviously, we have control on all our processes, but everyone does their own thing on their own, and a lot of people are not used to working on such an environment. Another interesting thing is that we were all unified on the headquarter team in Mexico, but now we have people in Mexico. I'm based in Spain. We have other person in Canada, we have the person in Argentina. So it's quite interesting how to build super engaging teams while having these geographically difficulties, right? It's also different because there's always a space to propose things to improve, and it's a scheduled weekly space where each person of the team has the lead on our weekly meetings, and they propose how to be better at something operational and at something strategical. So we try to get them to tell us how we could make their lives easier at work, and that covers operational issues, and we fix them right away. And then we try to get them to explain how they see the movement going, how they dream FuckUp Nights to be in the near future, and how we could get closer to that vision. So everyone that is part of FuckUp Nights is really shaping the future of the movement, and not only in headquarters, but also when it comes to our FuckUppers or local organizers. So that's really, it's really a company that it's built together and not by a couple of leaders and beers.
So I think a lot of businesses, Yannick, don't have the luxury of having that kind of structure where they started, as they meant to go on. So they started with a very open environment. They started with a very particular type of personality they wanted to recruit. And so they don't have the luxury, I guess, of having an open, trusting environment. But if a business was a corporate business already established, and the leaders in that business typically would be listening to this podcast. So if you were to give them something practical to apply today on introducing this concept of the FuckUp Night into their team, what would you advise that they do?
What I advise is always to give example. So if you want to change the culture of your company, and it's never late to do that, you have to give example, and you have to start by changing your habits and the way you communicate and the way you act. So starting by accepting failure publicly, it's great, and it doesn't necessarily need to be done at an organized FuckUp night. It can be at a weekly meeting. So you can just open 10 minutes to share the weekly failures, maybe the KPIs you didn't reach, the projects you had to kill this year in order to keep the boat floating, starting from management to employees, and get employees comfortable when it comes to talking about their screw-ups.
I'm curious about actually example that you may have had yourself, or your companies have had. Maybe an example that you can describe us and tell us, some lessons learned that you had, or some things that made you act differently after that. Would you have like something which really meant something to you, like a one fuck up which is important to you?
A couple, a lot. Okay, I'll tell you two.
Okay.
One, signing fucking contracts. If you don't sign a contract, you're very likely not going to get paid, and that has happened to us, and it happens to a lot of people. And we listened so many failure stories about people telling that they had to close their company because they didn't sign a proper contract. And we still didn't learn the lesson, and we didn't sign contracts, and we didn't get paid for. Number two, images in internet aren't free. And I used an image for a poster in November 2014, which was super cool, but the image owner was Getty Images. And they found out, we used this poster globally, and they found out we used it in Vienna, in Austria. So they fined us. It costed us, I think, 1,000 euros or 800 euros, I think. They found again about us using this image in Australia. So they fined us again for 800 euros. And I just hope they're not starting with letter A and then they keep going to the rest of the cities, because then we're really screwed. But those fines seem to keep coming, and it's like paying a monthly salary to get images. But the poster was pretty cool.
Did it have any beer on it, I think is the question.
No, it was like an empty toilet paper roll.
I would have another question about your feeling about how businesses are evolving. I feel from my hand that there's lots of transformations, and not only about digital transformation, there's also a different mindset coming inside organization. You just mentioned that some organizations are ready to have fuck-up nights or meeting inside their own companies, which for me is kind of, wow, that's big, that's huge. So how do you see this trend going? Is it something that we'll see more and more, or is it just like something which is a small piece? What are your thoughts about this future of organization and companies?
I think it's a natural evolution. If they want to keep as innovative as other companies, and if they want to have the best talent, if they want to craft the best ideas, then they need to do something about it. And sometimes it comes from not only accepting failure, but being right. First thing, people don't believe bullshit anymore, so they need to be true, right, honest, and straight, right? And I think it's just a matter of surviving. They are definitely huge changes in companies that are tending to different organization structure, way more horizontal rather than vertical. That is giving a lot of conflicts, because you can't put rules in on a completely horizontal companies, but you have to give tips on ways to work, and there are not many books that tell you how to manage these companies, and it's completely a different way of doing business. So I think there's a lot to improve on that side, on how to manage teams without being a boss, but helping people make the most of their professional capabilities. So let's see how it goes. I love the fact that this is happening already.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. Once again, if you would like to support our show, please subscribe to our channel, like us, or share this episode on your social media. Merci.